Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Get Stuck on Sports TV edition right here on Thumbcoast TV. I'm Brady Beedon. He is Dennis Stuckey. And Dennis, haven't been both at this desk in a while, so let's just kind of reset where everything is as we head into the back third of this boys' basketball season. Let's go team by team. Let's start with Port Huron Northern. They're 8-7. They're second in the MAC Red. We said at the beginning of the year, the record might not be pretty. And 8-7 is not a bad record, but I still contend that with the schedule they played, they are 12 to 15 points better than any other team in the area. And if any other team had the schedule that Northern has had, they'd be lucky to have 2 or 3 wins.
I was worried about their defense and how many points they were giving up, and they've played much better. They went on a little streak. I think it was 4 wins in a row. They had a night where they knocked down 13 threes against Chippewa Valley and got a big win at home. They followed that up with a pretty solid effort against Lincoln. They lost. It was their first home loss. They kind of ran out of gas down the stretch. I think the last 3 minutes of the game, they got outscored 9-1. But they had fought back all night long and got it to 47-47. It was a pretty darn good effort. And then, again, I'm not just throwing out the Saturday game, but they are at Cass Tech, and Cass Tech is really, really good. And they didn't embarrass themselves.
No, and they have had success against some of these top teams. I mean, their Chippewa Valley win's a really nice win. They are playing some of the best of the best. How many times in years past have we seen a Dakota team from the MAC Red come in with a below 500 record and be far and away the best team in that district, despite having maybe the 3rd or 4th best record?
Yeah, because when you look at what their body of work was, they played all the tough teams and prepared themselves for playoff basketball.
One team that is, playing pretty well and has maybe been one of the most impressive teams in the area is Port Huron High. They're now 11-2. They are undefeated in the MAC Gold. They are 5-0, chance to win a 3rd straight league title. And their only losses are to Northern and L'Anse Creuse North.
And we knew that Garrett James was like the guy. He's the shooter. He's the big scorer. But they may have found that they have another superstar on that team, or at least a budding one, in Jaden Carswell, who is playing the best basketball of his career to date, and is coming off a 30-point game in, I think, a very nice win at Tower. It was a game, they're battling with St. Clair for the league, and they can't stub their toe, and they've got the big second matchup with St. Clair coming up where they've got to go to St. Clair this time, and it was a tough game at home when they played them, and now they're, they've got these games. I don't want to call them trap games, but they are these little landmines, and if you step on one of them wrong, it might go off on you. And so that was a nice win at Tower, and Carswell was a big reason that they got it.
And we've talked about it on the podcast, but Jeremy Rosenau's done a very, very nice job. He helped cultivate through a couple different classes of talented players. 2 years ago, he had a nice senior class. So next year, he had to bounce back, still won a league title, and now this year just kept it rolling. PH has been very solid. Again, 11-2. They are being chased by St. Clair in the MAC Gold, who, Dennis, I think we can say with pretty good certainty right now that St. Clair is probably the best Division II school we cover. I know Yale's been pretty good, but they matched up, and St. Clair won very decisively. Yale's won 10 straight since then. We'll get to them in a bit. But St. Clair, they've scheduled a tough slate. They are 12-4 on the year, and they are going to look for another chance against PH later this week on Wednesday to try to get in the MAC Gold title picture.
But they're in the same boat as PH, and you can't stumble beforehand. You have to take care of business, whatever's in front of you now, take care of it, and then worry about the PH game when it actually happens. They've probably, we could argue who the best player in the area is, but they certainly have one of the top 3 players in the area, and he's playing like it in Braylon Franz. But they have depth. They have more this year than they had last year, and last year's team made a pretty good run in the playoffs.
Yeah, and they are back. They are playing really well. They've won 4 straight. Their only loss since losing to Northern on December 10th was to PH in overtime. That's their last regulation loss. They started 3-3 and they're 12-4 right now. St. Clair is a pretty darn good team, and once we get a couple more weeks down the road and we start talking districts, they're going to be ones that you are going to want to avoid because they're probably the favorite. The way it's set up, this is a team that could play in a quarterfinal.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a very possible thing.
Now, a team that's going to want to throw their hands up and say, well, what about us? The team that's hosting that district is Marysville. And they're 6-7 right now, but I kind of throw out everything beforehand. Yes, they still have a chance in the MAC Silver. They need a little bit of help. But Mackay Radford-Donawa is back in the lineup for them, and he's started to work off the rust. He is back, and he had a 20-point performance in their last game against East Point, a win for them. That right now for Marysville, hey, if you can get back in the league title picture, that's awesome. And that's a goal. You have a game at South Lake. You have a game at home against Centerline, 2 big matchups. You got to have those if you want to be in there. But for me, I want to see what Marysville's looking like going into the district. They're hosting, and they're probably going to have to beat a couple good teams, including St. Clair, if they want to get their first district title in a long, long time. I believe 2011 or 2012 was the last time Marysville was a district champion. So you have a long way to go to get there. I'm more looking at how they're playing than what necessarily they are in their conference standings.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hate to say, don't worry about the league title, but kind of don't worry about the league title. Worry about playing good basketball. Worry about these are the games in front of us. Let's be the best Marysville team we can, and let's continue to win games. And if conference stuff happens, great. But I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about when we get to the postseason, we're playing the best basketball that we can play.
Yeah, and because they don't control their own destiny. Even if they win out, if Centerline wins every other game besides that, you're still in second place. So it's nothing worth getting worked up about. Now, hey, you beat Southlake, you beat Centerline. Now we're looking at it and going, all right, they're going to be a tough out in that district. That's going to be a tough one in Marysville. But yeah, keep working on improving, finding the right rhythm. I think they're starting to find the rotation that works out well for them. But keep playing good basketball down the stretch, finish with the winning record. And again, with MPR now deciding the entire district seeding, every win means a little more.
Yeah, you can get yourself a better matchup so that you're around in the district longer and more of a threat then.
One other MAC team, Marine City, they're 2-8. They've played a couple of tough ones recently. They're going to try to find their footing, but the Mariners, a team that just doesn't quite have the horsepower that a lot of their opponents do.
No, they're not going to score as much, and that's an issue for them because they're defensively, they've given up a lot of points.
So, Dennis, I think we can say as we head to the end of January into the month of February, the BWAC is a 2-team race.
Again.
Now, yes. Now, there are more than 2 good teams in that league, but just the way everything's shaken out, Yale 8-0 in the league, 14-1 overall. Emley City 7-1 in the league, 9-4 overall. Those are the only 2 teams that have a shot. Armada has 3 losses, Croslex has 3 losses, North Branch has 4 losses, and everyone else has more than that. Maybe, I guess, Armada or Croslex, if they went out with a lot of help, could get back in it. But for all intents and purposes, Yale or Emley City or both are going to be your league champ this year.
Well, I mean, Croslex suffered a devastating loss this week to North Branch. It was only by a point, but it really hurts them in the standings. And Armada struggled a little bit with Elmont. Maybe they didn't take them that seriously. For them, though, fortunately, it wasn't a catastrophe. They got the win, but I just didn't expect them to have a 2-point game with Elmont. Emley City hasn't been playing the best, but we know they're dangerous. Yale's playing really good basketball right now, and you pointed it out on the podcast, eerily like last year.
Yeah, so let's start with Yale when we go through the BWAC. They've won 10 in a row. Their only loss at St. Clair back on the 17th of December, so well over a month ago. and they're kind of clearing everybody. And if you remember this time last year, Yale had a big win over Almont at home. Emily City dropped one to Armada, gave them a 2-game lead with, I think, 5 or 6 to go. And it looked like they had it wrapped up. I think they went 3-3 or 2-3 down the stretch. Emily City went undefeated, and the Spartans got the outright BWAC title. So right now, Yale in a spot where, the next handful of games aren't necessarily easy. At North Branch and at Almont. You're the favorite in both those games. But those are games that I would be just a little more nervous because you're going on the road for both of those.
Yeah, but again, if you're as good as we think you are, where you play the games shouldn't matter, and how you play the games, you should be able to play the way you do at home on the road. The North Branch game is going to be interesting to me because Emily City really beat North Branch bad.
Yeah,
and that might have inspired North Branch against Croslex. Like Emily City beating North Branch might have been the worst thing to happen to Croslex because I think the Broncos were really focused when they went into that game. With Yale, if Emily City can beat them like that, you got to feel like you can go to North Branch and get a win.
Well, mentioned Emily City. They were struggling a little bit. They had lost consecutive games. They've won 4 straight, including putting up nearly 150 points combined in their last 2. Emily City, I think, maybe has found a groove. Will tell in their next 2. They go to Flint International in a non-league game, a team that's 11-2 on the year, and then they host Croslex and Armada for that matter. So really the next 3. If they get through all 3 of those, you're going, all right, Emily City's hitting their stride.
Yeah, and this would be a good time for it down this back stretch. We know what Xander Nash does for me with Emily City. It's getting consistency out of the other guys, and I think guys like Landon Jones and Matt Evans and Sommers are playing better basketball for them than they were earlier in the year.
So in the middle part of the BWAC, Armada, they're 9-3. Very solid record. The problem is those 3 losses have all come to the other 3 top teams in the BWAC, and only one of them was within single digits, and that was the 7-point loss to Croslex.
I like Armada. I think they're a very nice team. They've got some players that I like, and I'm going to miss when some of these guys graduate. But I'm with you. They're like the 4th best team in the league, but they're not quite with the heavyweights yet.
Because Croslex, they're 8-5, and they've actually been struggling. They've lost 5 of their last 7, including 2 in a row to Yale and North Branch. The North Branch one, I think, is the one that hurts because you look at some of the other ones in that stretch. Harbor Beach by 4, they're 12-1. St. Clair in overtime, that one stings. Yale by 16, a game they were in but couldn't keep up with the Bulldogs. And if you win that one, all right, you feel like, now you say, hey, we've won 3 out of our last 4. Instead, they've lost 5 of their last 7, and Croslex needs to find a little bit of mojo coming up.
Yeah, and again, this is too good of a team to have a stretch like this. Mm-hmm. I really think Croslex is still dangerous. I just think that unlike the other teams, they're having their bad stretch right now, and they need to get out of it in a hurry or it's going to slip away.
North Branch is 9-5. They got the big win over Croslex. They had a 4-game stretch with Armada, Emily City, Croslex, and Yale. They're now 1-2 in that stretch. They get a chance later in the week against Yale at home. They win that one. All right, now we have to pay attention to the Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, and we've been talking about them as one of the sleeper teams of the don't take them not seriously or they'll come up and beat a Croslex or so they're dangerous. But again, Yale, Emily City, you want to be elite, you want to make a deep playoff run, North Branch is a team you have to beat.
Yes, you do. Other BWAC teams, Almont 2-5. They again almost knocked off Armada. They've got a couple of league wins, and at the bottom of the league, 0-7, both Richmond and Algonac.
And Richmond is the anomaly for me because I still look at that roster and go, how is this team 0-7 in league play? I don't think they're that bad, but they can't at least to this point, they have not been able to figure it out, and it doesn't look like they're going to.
Do want to give a quick shout out to Cardinal Mooney. They got a big win after struggling a bit out at Grand Rapids Sacred Heart. They got that one in overtime over the weekend. That'll do it for boys basketball. We'll step aside, come back. We'll talk some girls hoops when we return here on the Get Stuck on Sports TV edition right here on Thumbcoast TV.
From doctor's appointments to work, shopping, and dining adventures, Blue Water Area Transit buses are the lifeline of our community. Depend on us for a ride that connects you to life's essentials. Blue Water Area Transit. Ride the wave.
Riding the bus will avoid the hustle and save you lots of dough. Road rage, don't chance it. Ride Blue Water Transit everywhere you go.
Welcome back to the Get Stuck on Sports TV edition right here on Thumbcoast TV. Brady, Beedon, Dennis Stuckey. Let's change gears, go to girls basketball. Let's start in the MAC Red. Port Huron High, they're 8-5. They've been playing pretty well. Now, the top two teams in the MAC Red, Utica Ford and Utica Eisenhower, are elite. Those are two teams that PH is just not on their level. But the other 32 teams in the entire MAC, you could make an argument PH is the next best team there.
They certainly, on nights when they're playing the way they're capable, they're a pretty tough team. I know Northern wants a third shot at them, that they feel like they're as good. But as you said, PH has beaten them a couple of times.
And kind of decisively.
So, again, Turner and Weber are very dynamic players. And they handle the ball well. They create chaos on the floor, and they can score, and they can create scoring for other teams. Their bigs are very versatile. When Brooklyn Ware and Bezna are playing well, they're a tough team to play against. They just have to be, because once you get into the postseason, it's win or go home. So you can't have that night where you just decide, I'm not going to play as well as I can.
No, and I mean, their losses to all teams that are pretty solid. I mean, for their standard, the Croslex loss is probably one they want back. Not that Croslex is a bad team, but they probably feel they should win that game. Anchor Bay they lost to in December, and the Chippewa Valley one, they got beat by 19. I feel like they're a different team now than they were before Christmas.
Yeah, I've kind of got a sour taste because I saw the Eisenhower game, and I know Eisenhower is good.
Yeah.
But PH was not competitive in that game at all. And I feel like, especially at home, it's one thing to lose, it's another thing to just get embarrassed.
Yeah, and they took a tough one, but still, third place in the MAC Red. Again, the top two in that league are pretty darn good. Yeah. Port Huron Northern's looking for a MAC Blue title. They are now 9-4 overall on the year. They are a half game back of Southlake in the MAC Blue. Southlake is their only league loss, so they control their own destiny, and they're starting to have players fill some roles with Kate Nichols being out. Pearl Perrette has stepped up. She had 15 in their last game, and it's kind of been by committee scoring, which is usually what they've been doing, but everyone's kind of filled up and stepped up into a bigger role.
Well, yeah, again, here's like, man, another injury. Kate Nichols, it's a key player for them. When can they get through a season without losing somebody of value? But what we've learned in the last 2 years is the kind of the next person up mentality for them. And this time Pearl Perrette has come to life and has had 15 or 16 points in 2 of the last 3 games. Madison Ramo had a little quiet stretch, and she stepped up recently, had a 13-point game. Charlotte Eastman, she started the season shooting like 50% from three-point land. We knew that you can't keep up that pace. That's insane. But she had 16 the other night, and if she gets the stroke going again, Northern is still a really good basketball team.
And they're going to have some winnable games. They're at Marysville and at Stevenson. Those two teams are in the bottom of the league. Marysville, they are improving. They just started so down. They're 4-8 right now. They got their first league win against Stevenson. Ryan and Kendall Quinn are starting to score a little more. but against the top teams, they're still struggling to get near 40.
Yeah, but I do like that they broke their pattern recently. The pattern's been great in the first quarter, and then all of a sudden it stops. This time around, they were down after 3, and they had a 22-point fourth quarter to get a big win. And again, in the last 2 games, Kendall Quain has scored 37 points. That'll give you some confidence. Ryan Quain's coming off a 19-point game. And I really think when Minesburg got back into the lineup, that changed that team a little bit. And Ryan Ratchey is Ryan Ratchey. He figures it out. You know, he plays everybody and then figures out what everybody's role is. And they're starting to play better. The question is can they be good enough? I know they've got Northern coming up. That'll be a big test for them.
Yeah, Northern and Southlake this week. It's going to be a tough couple of games. The top 2 teams in their league. One team that's just been rolling is St. Clair. Now, they haven't had a huge matchup. They're 9-2 on the year. Their losses are to Yale and PH. And their biggest wins are Fraser and Fitz. Those are 2 back-to-back wins and 2 very big wins. Fraser in the non-league, Fitz in league. But besides that, they haven't, the teams that they're supposed to take care of, they take care of.
Yeah, and they do it in kind of a quiet way where we don't pay or we haven't paid a lot of attention to it. But defensively, St. Clair is tough. And offensively, not spectacular, but just consistent. They get into the 40s, and if they get into the 40s, they're tough to beat.
Yeah, they don't have one like go-to superstar. They just defensively try to turn that into offense. And if you get a set of officials that, you know, maybe let things go a little more, don't call it as tight, it's going to be tough to play against St. Clair.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. For girls basketball, we're not used to really saying it, but they're a physical team. They might be the most physical team in the area outside of maybe a couple of those good BWAC teams.
Final MAC team, Marine City, they're 6-6. You know, they lost a ton. And honestly, if you would have told us at the beginning of the year they'd be 6-6, we'd probably take it. They're beating the teams they should probably beat, and they've lost to most of the teams that you go, yeah, that sounds about right. They're the underdog in that one.
I'm going to be perfectly honest. When the season began, I thought after 12 games we might be looking at an 0-12, 1-11 Marine City basketball team. So that they're 6-6, I think they're way ahead of the game. And I think that this young group of players has actually done a pretty good job this year.
So they're still competing in the MAC Gold. I think they can be a top half team in that league. They're, again, beating a lot of the teams they should. Meanwhile, out in the BWAC, talked about how the boys were a 2-horse race. This is a 2-team race, and Croslex has been competitive, but they've lost to both Armada and Yale. Armada and Yale are a combined 22-1. Yeah. You really feel like it's these 2 and everybody else. Well, these 2, then Croslex, and then everybody else.
Yeah, and the big showdown coming up on Tuesday night. It'll be in Yale, and this will, I think, tell us a lot of what we need to know. I really don't anticipate either of these teams stumbling at this point. Again, and I really like Croslex, but Yale and Armada have separated themselves from the rest of the league, and now they have to separate themselves from each other.
Yeah, and it's a matchup we've been waiting for a long time. I mean, Armada, Yale, at Yale. Yale's the only team with a loss, and that was a 2-point loss to Oxford at home.
Yeah.
Besides that, Armada's undefeated. They have wins over much bigger schools like Romeo, Troy Athens. They've been playing some big-time schools. Yale's matched up with some pretty good teams so far this year. Again, one of St. Clair's only couple of losses. But Armada's really tested themselves. Like, they have had some tough games. They know that they can be a big-time program, and maybe that gives them just a slight edge as they've had some stiffer competition than maybe Yale has had.
Well, they're, again, a team that I think Upton is a superstar but doesn't get the attention because her supporting cast does a lot there. On the other side, when we talk about Yale, the first name instantly that pops off your tongue is Sadie Dykstra, and with good reason. She has an S on her jersey and flies around and does just stupidly good things. But Yale's supporting cast has been better this year, and to me, that's who's going to win the game for them on Tuesday if they win. Is it won't just be, Sadie scored 30. It'll be Sadie scored 30 and this person added 15 and this person had 12 and this person had 7. That will be the difference for them.
Again, also around the BWAC, Croslex, they are 8-2, but their 2 losses are to Armada and Yale. And the bad news for them is they already have gotten them at home twice.
Yeah, and that's the only reason I'm not talking more smack about them. I haven't sold any stock in them. I still think this is a really good basketball team with some really good players, and I love the way they play. And so this is still a good team, but let's face it, it's a tough hill to climb because they couldn't win at least one of those 2 big games so far.
Yeah, and again, they have to go to Armada and Yale the rest of the way, and they need some help with the way those 2 games shake out as well. Emily City, they're kind of right down the middle. They're 6-6, 4-2 in league. They've beaten everyone below them and lost to everyone above them.
Yeah, and they had that was their week last week. Regina just smacked them, and then they turned around and smacked Algonac. So, they're, again, the team with some good players, but they're just not quite there yet.
The rest of the BWAC in North Branch at 3-4, Algonac and Richmond 1-6, Almont is 0-7 in the league. Final few minutes, just talk a little bit about hockey real quick because it's been a little bit. Northern, they've been playing better, but the results haven't always been there. You can see they've improved, but they still have a few steps to go to compete with the schedule they have.
I thought they were really making some progress, and then the last 4 games, they've kind of fallen off a little bit. Again, I think they've played some tougher teams, too, in the last 4 games. So it's been a struggle for them. I think it's 2-16 now as of recording the show. They went up to the Sioux over the weekend and lost to 2 good teams up there. They were pretty competitive in one game and got shut out 6-0 by the Sioux. PH is still playing well. They haven't been playing much lately. They'll play a game against Grosse Pointe North that's later tonight, the day that we're recording. They're going to win that game. And I was just kind of looking at their playoff regional. It's not undoable for them. Like D1 is tough. They're not winning a state championship, but they have a shot at their regional to get to a quarterfinal before they run into a powerhouse.
And there have been years where we're hoping they can win a game.
Yeah.
Like maybe if things break right, they can win a game. I think it was a couple years ago when they had 7 kids. It was L'Anse Creuse Unified that they threw everything they had at them and lost by 2, and it was a great effort from them in a regional game.
Yeah, and they've got not just depth now, but their depth can play. It's not just, they got extra guys so they're not tired out. They got extra guys who can actually play. So that helps them out. The team I'm worried about is Marysville. They were so good for such a long stretch, and the last 8 games, they are really struggling. Now, I think they've also cranked up the volume of tough teams that they're playing, but they've got a tough regional, and they're struggling right now.
Yeah, I don't know if they need just to get a couple wins to get the mojo back, but they're losing to some, they played some tougher teams, but teams that you would expect them to beat if you want them to be competitive in their region, like St. Clair Shores and L'Anse Creuse Unified. And the other thing is some of these games, they're not scoring like they used to.
Yeah, and I know that the last couple of times I've seen them, that they've been trying to focus on playing better defense, because quite frankly, that is what helps you win. This is a talented team, but they've got a few games here down the stretch to try to figure it out, but it's kind of glancing over the schedule. They got a lot of tough games still left on their schedule, so we'll see how that goes for them. Legion is struggling. They got an injury to the guy that was leading their team in goal scoring in Mayer. So that's hurt them a little bit. And the team that's completely turned it around, Anchor Bay's won 7 in a row. They were 2-8-2, and I wasn't even paying attention to them. And the other day I glanced, they beat Dakota 6-0, and I looked, and it was their 7th straight win.
All right, well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the Get Stuck on Sports TV edition. For Dennis Stuckey, I'm Brady Beedon. Join us next time here on Thumbcoast TV.